Ladies and gentlemen, if you got here in the middle, this here is Ethan Nicolle, the creator of Axe Cop. And mostly I want to just have your questions for him because you're going to win cards if you ask him questions, according to Fox 23. Yes.
So my question is this. You and your younger brother made this series, and he's really young and impressionable and therefore probably would waste money. How does that work so he doesn't screw up losing all that money from making Axe Cop and stuff with you?
One thing I think that people perceive him as this rich child, which is not. I mean, I'm not rich if you get to know me in my life. So, generally the way that we do it, what we do with Axe Cop is, he doesn't have a lot. He's getting older, so he could spend money like crazy. We put money into an account, and really we decide what he wants to earn for each story that we write together. So it's usually a video game. So we'll say, okay, we'll get this video game, we'll write this story, or we'll try to do this whole mini series, and then we'll get you like a new game system or something. So it's kind of his version of a paper route.
I love it. Yes, sir.
How has your creative process changed since it's become more popular? More people are aware of what you're doing.
It hasn't changed much. The main thing, what really afforded me the opportunity to do it the way we did it was, a thing that I really resented, and that was being a very lonely single person with no family. But I couldn't done it. I have a family now, and there's no way I could do what I did. Like I went and spent an entire month with my brother 2 times, playing with him, goofing off, taking notes, and I couldn't leave for a month now. So there's that. I spent a lot of time on the phone with him from the beginning. Pretty much, it all started with playtime on Christmas, and then after that it was all phone calls. So it's just different combinations of him visiting me or me visiting him, or long phone calls, sometimes Skype, but Skype doesn't work as well because it has those emoticons.
Yeah.
And he likes to play with those.
Ethan, if you don't mind, you've probably been asked this a lot, but can you tell me when the idea solidified for you? Like, this is something I'm really going to run with, to have this collaboration with Malachi. Is there anybody here who is not familiar with the real basics of Axe Cop, like what it is? It is do you want to explain it? Or would you like me to do my dumb version?
Axe Cop was created by me and my little brother, who was 5 at the time. I was 29. It was just a Christmas visit. He was goofing off and said he wanted to play Axe Cop with me, and I thought that sounded like a great comic book idea. So I just turned our playtime into a comic. We ended up creating about 4 pages of comic material over that stay, and I created AxeCop.com, not really thinking there would ever be anything more than just kind of a little joke me and him were into, but I was having so much fun making it, and it was kind of my way of testing the waters of webcomics.
Yeah.
And it just went viral out of nowhere. So that's kind of the basic story.
Okay. Ma'am.
I'm a big fan of the webcomic version, and I was kind of curious to see how it would translate into moving images, and it's awesome. But what's sort of the biggest challenge for you guys, like in terms of thinking about, okay, this is usually stationary, what's sort of going to change now? What is the hardest part?
I think the hardest part is just not being the sole person in control of it. You have to give up a lot of control to other people. You don't always feel like maybe they see things the way you do. So I think that, for one thing, this is adult programming, so I try very hard to make sure that Axe Cop is edgy for kids, but I don't ever try to be edgy. But it's I always want it to be something that Malachi can read. There's been some episodes of the show that I wouldn't want him to see. I just feel like this gets too dark and weird, and it goes. I feel like they always throw in a couple of jokes that are. There's no way a kid made that up. It's too dark, So that's hard for me, when that kind of stuff pops in there. So that's probably the hardest part, but even that's weird to use the word hard. It's exciting to see your stuff come to life, and I think the exciting parts about seeing it come to life on the screen are, giving the characters more personality, because there's just personality you can't put into words on a page, but what Ken Marino brings to Flip Cop, he's a character he never was. And Rob Hubel, Gray Diamond was more bland of a character than like he's like Cyclops, you know. And what Rob Hubel does with him is amazing. Grey Diamond wasn't even a very significant character until the TV show. And then yeah, Nick Offerman as Axe Cop, he nails it. So all that stuff, seeing them have their own personalities, and also just getting to see action actually happening. Like we don't really see Axe Cop fighting with his axe much. We've never really seen Flute Cop fights. And
Right. I love that.
You know, Malachi's explained it before, but what's it look like when he actually plays, you know, brain exploding flute jazz? I'm not really the organizer. I'm like his editor. So I do decide what stays and what goes. I decide how to, you know, what order to put it in. Sometimes I'll go, you know, this story is not connected. It doesn't make sense that's connected. And I'll figure out ways to connect them. And a lot of times I'll go through old notes of ours and find another thing that he said and connect it using that. So it's all a giant, massive puzzle pieces that don't necessarily fit together. And me digging through them of like tons and hours of us talking and goofing off. And if I can't find anything to make them fit together, I'll call him and ask him questions to try to make them fit together. But it's always, all the materials from him. The dialogue is, as often as he gives me great dialogue, I use his exact words. And then a good amount of the dialogue is my paraphrase of what he said. You know, I'll write the dialogue based on what he said, but it's not word for word from his mouth. But definitely not chronological to what he doesn't tell me the story and I just draw it as he tells it to me. It would be the same.
But I have to say, like, as somebody who's a fan, you know, in that viral way right out of the gate, that was always part of the incredible charm of it to me, is that you work so hard to preserve his voice and his cadence and
Yeah,
his actual
I
words.
wanted to feel.
Like, I recognize that from my kids,
Yeah.
the way stories just kind of morph and
Yeah,
twist around on each other.
yeah. Like, I still wanted it to feel chaotic.
Yeah.
But there is that, like, I think most of what you edit out is they get very repetitive or they get stuck on, like, he starts telling me about this thing called a chainsaw gun and he talks about it for about 3 hours. I don't know, 300 pages of Axe Cop standing there talking about a chainsaw gun.
Is there actually a chainsaw gun?
Yeah.
Yes.
Has he started to like appreciate like the viralness of it or like the just the animated series? Does he have like, is he aware that that's not normal? That like
He knows
the
because-
games that you create when you're a kid, like they don't always turn into TV shows.
He only knows because everybody's constantly telling him.
Okay.
You know, I was like, I hope you know how unique this is. Your brother's a nice guy. Yeah, and he's like, whatever.
So are you nervous, or well, maybe not nervous, but like, do you think that like it'll lose some of its innocence as he gets older, or like, do you think that he'll grow with it, or like, I mean, what's the future hold? I guess.
I mean, that's like the question I probably get the most, and I always say I didn't plan the beginning of Axe Cop, so I'm not going to plan the ending of it. Like, it's just, as long as it's fun, we'll do it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's all sorts of great writers that are very creative of all ages, you know, so age isn't a determining factor of being a great writer and funny, you know, like, I think that, I don't know, as long as it's fun to make Axe Cop, we'll keep making it. We'll just see what happens. I mean, I think that Axe Cop, people always like, isn't he going to change? But like, he's changed every single time I'm with my brother. He's changing. If anybody has kids, you know, your kids are like every week they're a different kid. They're growing up. They've learned new stuff. They're done with whatever they were excited about last week. They're excited about something new, and they're learning all these new words, and like they're curious about this and that. And so he's always changing. That's like that's just like part of the reality. And so far, I find it fascinating to see Axe Cop changing with Malachi. My favorite story we've done is our latest when Axe Cop gets married. And just his perception of what marriage, how it works, you know, why do you get married in the first place? You know, all that stuff's so funny.
Can you help us with that?
Yes. Feel free to shout questions out so everybody can
I
hear.
will shout right now.
Okay, well,
I'm wondering if you're
okay.
a fan of the Cyclops.
I don't mean actually shout them out without being
I'm
called on. I mean, when I call on you, be loud.
You gotta focus back here a little
I'm
bit. You're
sorry.
calling all of them up there.
Yeah, I know. And you're
Okay, you're next, sir.
Is Axe Cop, do you think it's based on like some person, a real person in Malachi's brain of, oh, you know, I'm bringing in this person, this person, this person?
No, I would say that for him, when he very first wanted to play Axe Cop, he was literally thinking something like Cops and Robbers. Like he was thinking, he wasn't even thinking it was a novel idea. He just had gotten a fireman set of toy fireman stuff, and he pulled out this toy axe, and he was just following the logic he learned at that point. Like, you know, a firefighter is a guy that fights fires. A cop is a guy that uses a gun. So if you combine the two, it'd be an axe cop, because he uses an axe to fight crime. And he just thought, it's the funny weird distinctions we make as adults. Like, you take this to Cartoon Network or like to like a, you know, a kids network. And they're like, well, it's just kind of gruesome that he has an axe. It's like, you have cartoons with swords.
Right.
It's a sharp instrument that you use to sever limbs from people.
Right. And he's pretty upfront about what he's going to do with it.
Yeah.
Like, it is his catchphrase after all.
So, but as a kid, it's just like, this is good guys use weapons to fight bad guys. So he's just picking up the nearest weapon.
Right.
So to him, an axe cop was a possible job. Like he thought they might even really exist. And he just
Right.
like, he wanted to say, do you want to play cops? But he had an axe. So he's like, you want to play axe cops? And then I got the image in my head. I don't think even in his mind he was a character. It was just a job.
Right. It's a division of police.
Like it's a kind of SWAT team axe cop.
Awesome. Anybody in the back?
How do you balance Axe Cop and Bearmageddon?
Can I just back up? Can you explain a little bit about Bearmageddon for those of you who don't?
Yeah, Bearmageddon's my other webcomic. I was actually working on it before Axe Cop, preparing to release it. And the reason that I did Axe Cop originally was just to kind of test out the functionality of a webcomic and website. And I wanted to work the kinks out before I released my real webcomic, Bearmageddon. So then Axe Cop took over my life, and I decided pretty early on that I didn't want all my eggs to be in one basket. So I decided to get back into Bearmageddon and start putting that out as well. So now I do 1 page of Bearmageddon a week and 2 pages of Axe Cop webcomic a week, and I also do the Axe Cop printed miniseries. So it's just a matter of like blocking out my time. So Bearmageddon is my project that I don't really make any money on. It's which is like every project I've had up until Axe Cop. So it's just kind of the same thing. Like it used to be that I had a day job and then I'd work on my project that I didn't make any money on at night. So now it's like Axe Cop is my day job and Bearmageddon is my project I do for free at night. And and so yeah, I just kind of make it work because I just don't want to just be doing one thing, and I don't want to always be dependent on Malachi, and I want to always be dependent on the success of Axe Cop. I want to feel like I'm doing other stuff, you know, and I want to do something that's just all mine. And Bearmageddon is completely mine. So.
Cool. Anybody? Yes, sir.
What made you decide to go with a webcomic rather than trying to take it to, say, Dark Horse or Marvel?
I had climbed that steep hill of trying to get published for years. I'd really tried. Indie comics were big when I was in high school. It was kind of like the heyday of SLG and Giant and Homicidal Maniac, and people were buying black and white indie comics. They were going in, and like I had a whole bunch of friends that would go to the comic shop to find new stuff, like find out what's the new black and white comic that, you know, we all wanted to be underground. Underground was mainstream, you know? And so, like, I couldn't wait to be part of that scene. But by the time I finally, I got an SLG comic published, Chumbles Buzz, it's called. It made it, it's in the comic shops, but at this point, the internet, webcomics are just starting to happen. People just aren't going into comic shops to find new stuff. Like, most of the people that go into comic shops know what they want when they go in. They already have a box of, you know, their pull list or whatever, and you know, the place where people find out what they want is on the internet. So I decided, you know, I realized that, like, what's my goal in making comics right now? Is it to get an audience or to get some money? And getting money is really not a reality if your comic isn't known by a lot of people, and a lot of people want to spend money on it. So you need an audience first. It's obvious. So I decided I need an audience more than I need money right now. So the web. It's like, I just need to make my comic very shareable, very accessible, and I need to just try to bring this to the internet. So that was like my idea with Axe Cop and with Bearmageddon. I'm like, I'm just going to do my next book on the internet. Because the other thing that happens is when you release a book, you have maybe a month where they're interviewing you and posting reviews, and then people just stop talking about it. But if you put your comic on the internet, it's alive and it's constantly growing, and every week there's a new page, so you're constantly getting new fans reading it. New people want to review it. New people want to interview you about it. So that's like years of promotion and building audience and stuff that just doesn't happen if you just release a book into into the stores. So.
Right. You've gone like from 0 to 100 success-wise with Axe Cop, and it's all happened in real time with feedback from fans. Has that affected you in any way, or do you read much of it or take much of it in?
I've only now gotten like just probably in the last since the TV show came out, gotten to where there's just too much to even keep up with.
Yeah.
Try to read it all. I have always been someone who obsessively reads it all. I think I've been pretty fortunate that there's not a lot of really crummy people out there talking bad about Axe Cop. There's been a few, but they kind of embarrass themselves usually. They're such curmudgeons,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it does have an effect on your work when you have people constantly, when you have comments going up the moment you post a page. That definitely affects your work. But I don't know if I can say how exactly.
Well, there's definitely an anti-comments movement in general going on now. People are just like, I'm not gonna look at them. But I also think you can find good feedback in there too, or and sometimes get stroked in a way that you need when you're not working for a lot of money. I wanted to talk a little bit about just like the characters in Axe Cop. Have any emerged as your favorite to draw or just to play around with? You have quite a roster at this point.
Yeah, so we average one new character per page. That's quite a bit. It's
amazing.
Hundreds of pages now. So. I still find Axe Cop fascinating as far as his personality.
Yeah.
What's he going to say or do next every time? How's he going to solve this problem? In the cartoon, I love Flute Cop. It's just hilarious.
Has that been affected by, I think you said before, pretty much by the actors who played them and added their personality? I agree. That's really, it's been cool to see Flute Cop, not only get a great voice, but see the way that he explodes his enemies with flute. And he really is in like the first couple of Axe Cops ever, right?
Yeah, and then he just changes.
It's such a great surprising turn because you think this little kid he's into axes and everything. He has a Flute Cop introduced, and you draw him as sort of this rotund middle management detective.
And that was literally, we were at that same toy box he pulled the axe out of, and it was, well, I'll be, or he goes, want to play Axe Cop? And I go, all right, who will I be? And he pulls out a toy recorder, but I'm like, what is that, a flute? Want to be Flute Cop? And he goes, fine, you be Axe Cop and I'll be Flute Cop.
That's awesome.
So he's like, sign up here, we got some
origin
dinosaurs to kill. And then it was like, the moment he got dinosaur blood on him, he was dinosaur soldier. So.
Yeah, he was barely Flute Cop for like a heartbeat. And then, whoop, dinosaur soldier. Yes?
Is there anything that your brother had to fight to keep in the show or comic? That you were just like, I don't know if we can do that. And he went, no, this needs to stay in there.
I think there was one concept that he kept bringing up, and I kept avoiding it, and that was Everyman. If anybody's familiar with Everyman, he's half man, half everything. So, one thing I just kept having a time figuring out what that would look like. And I'm like, so he's everything. Like, he can be a man, or he can turn into everything at the same time. Yeah. So then we're going down the list of like, what does that look like? So he can be, so he's like a shrimp, and he's a chicken, and he's a table, and he's like, oh, tables can't fight.
Unlike a shrimp.
Yeah. Well, then no, actually, he did say shrimp can't fight either, can they? I go, well, they can pinch. He's like, okay, shrimp, keep shrimp. But then no inanimate objects. So I'm like, no tables or chairs. He's like, no, nothing that can't fight. So I go, so swords and bombs? He's like, yeah, swords and bombs. So it's like basically anything living, anything, even like fictional things, any superhero, any bad guy, any creature that's ever lived, even in mythology, and a bunch of weapons floating around, like basically a hurricane. So finally,
that's the human half.
Yeah. So finally, we drew it. Well, the idea is he's a character, and the way it happens is a mad scientist kidnaps this guy who looks like an everyman.
Yeah.
Which is my little joke. It's like Tim Allen or something.
Right.
And he gets he has an army of zombies from hell, which is a whole other story.
Yes.
And they extract blood from everything. So they have all these different blood vials because we know that blood has transformative properties. And he injects the blood of everything into this man. He gives him the power to turn into everything on command. So he can either be just a guy or he can just turn in everything.
That is a great theme running through Axe Cop, that transformative power of blood and other stuff as needed. It's like, it changed the story, so this guy has to change. Blood. Why not? It's like right out of the gate, people are changing. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Well, I was kind of wondering. I know that Axe Cop is really blown out, but Armageddon hasn't really taken on that sort of life yet. I was wondering if, like, down the line, if the whole Axe Cop phenomenon with your name on it is really going to make things like that a lot easier to push through or to gain prominence with? Or?
Yeah, that was one frustration that was expressed to me by the editor, or the president of SLG, when he had my old comics for sale, and he said, your success on Axe Cop has had no effect on your old work. People don't go out and seek out your other work. You know? Then it's true, like very rarely do people go out and go, oh, this stuff he makes pretty cool, you should check out this other work. I think probably partially the unique part of it is, you know, I make a comic with my little brother, and that's the part of it that I like about it. I do think that having the Axe Cop audience did help me to get an initial audience with Armageddon, so I can't knock that. And Armageddon has, it actually, when I look at my numbers, a majority of my weekly audience is often Armageddon audience because it's very dedicated. People want to know what's going to happen next. They're very, like, much more on the edge of their seat, and they keep coming back constantly. So Axe Cop people come in waves, and they wait when things go viral. People can stop by. There is a much smaller audience that comes every single week to find out what happens next in Axe Cop.
Questions? Anyone?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Does Malachi have any other ideas for comics or anything that he wants to put forward with you, or is he happy and content with Axe Cop? And
I think most of his ideas end up getting put into Axe Cop. We've done a couple things called Axe Cop Presents.
yeah.
If you ever see those, that's just, they're having a couple ones where he's like, I just don't want to work on Axe Cop, no Axe Cop. I'm like, fine, let's do whatever. And I go, can I still make it into a comic? He's like, yeah. And so, you know, we did this couple of pages of a comic called Jack and John, Vampire Zombie Hunters. We did Animal Man, which one was really funny to me. So we've done a couple of those. A lot of times he'll make the idea up thinking it's going to be a non-Axe Cop thing, and then he'll end up tying Axe. He always ties everything together somehow.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I've noticed a lot of times when kids play, they incorporate existing pop culture characters into the little stories that they create. Is that a thing you find yourself having to filter out, or does he know?
Constantly. That's a lot of our characters come directly from him trying to use a copyrighted character. Like Bat Warthog Man was trying to use Batman. And I'm like, you can't use Batman. I go, remember you, because I had given him a book of animals, and I said, why don't we come up with some cool combinations of animals? Because I love drawing animal combinations. And so he found, he'd never seen a warthog where he's like, what is that? And I go, it's a warthog. He's like, a warhog? He thought it was war. We're at war with this thing. And he's looking at the bats, and he's like, a bat and a warthog is the best combination of animals. And he shut the book. So he decided he had found the best and didn't need to find any more combinations. So later when he wanted to put Batman in the story, and he's like, all right, we can make a guy that's better than Batman. And that's by making a Bat Warthog Man. And so,
just add more animals. It increases the quality as you go.
A lot of times I'll ask him a bunch of questions to make the character less and less like the character he's trying to rip off. Like he wanted to put the Ben 10 in the comic. It was like 10 aliens. And I'm like, I can't really rip that off. So I kept asking him all these questions, asked him to change the name, and he came up with the 10 Ben Matanga. Child alien creature guys that like are all these like little anime characters, and so we have them.
There are little I was just sort of reviewing some of the early strips in preparation for this panel, and I was reminded that there are some really delightful things you don't take in the first time because you're so blown away by the idea, like what he names people and families. It's usually some combination of rhyming nonsense words, right? Like Schmenga and Benga Trenga or something like that.
There's parents' names or Bobber and Gobber Smartest.
Yeah. Fantastic. You had a question?
Yeah. Does your brother ever reject or take issue with the way that you represented or interpreted his ideas or his characters?
Yeah. There are times, really, I I don't let him be super involved. Once he's given me it, I just take it and I do with it what I'm going to do with it. And and a lot of times that's one of the fun things is when he actually reads the comics when they're done. He almost doesn't remember what he said. He's like, I said this. Like, well, I really had to organize it. You didn't say it in this order, but you said all this stuff. There was one in particular. He was very disturbed by it. I could not figure out what he was trying to tell me. If you read Bad Guy Earth, there's a scene where on all the farms, there's all these chickens and all their brains pop out. And their brains have robotic body parts and swords, and they go and start killing farmers. And he's like, I did not say that. He was like disturbed by the page, like he couldn't look at it. I'm like, no, I mean, it popped the chicken. I don't know. We tried so hard to describe it.
Yeah.
And he described it to me again. I'm like, yeah, that's what I drew. Is that what I drew? And he's like, no, it's not. So there's sometimes a disconnect. Also because he's just learning words, and sometimes he uses words way wrong. So that's one thing that makes it funny. He doesn't even know what he's saying.
Lately you've been using guest artists and kids as writers. I mean, not that lately. It's been for a while, right? How did that come about?
Well, it's pretty normal in webcomics to have other people do guest episodes sometimes when you can't post for a week. It's a way of sharing your community with them, and they share their community if you do a webcomic on theirs. Like me and Dr. McNinja, we did that.
Yeah.
That worked out really well. And then PvP, we did it. But just recently, actually, like right now, because I have a TV show, I have a writing job at Bearmageddon, and I have another Axe Cop miniseries I'm working on. I'm not going to be able to do another Axe Cop website comic story for a while. I have a bunch of Ask Axe Cops backed up. I'm going to start posting. So we have a new story that a guy who's done a few of the guest comics before, with his niece, with two of his nieces. He does really good work. His name's Tom Martin. Some of you guys might have seen his.
It's kind of cool.
Super Charlotte and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's got a new story, and we're actually, if you go to the Axe Cop website right now, it says coming in 2 weeks. We have a new storyline coming out by a different pair. It's going to be by him and his two nieces that are, I think 5 and 9. And it's funny, and they're girls, so this is like the first Axe Cop story written by young little girls, and it's pretty funny. Axe Cop, it's called Revenge on Rainbow Girl.
Oh yeah.
Axe Cop's getting at revenge on Rainbow Girl, who has the power to shoot rainbows that can just turn really hot and kill you.
Yeah, of course. Yes, sir.
What was your parents' initial feedback or reaction to this, and how is it different now?
I think that my dad's always been super excited about it. He loves it. Malachi's mom did not know what to make of it. She still thinks it's just so weird to her. Like the idea that, even that it was becoming so popular, but the idea that it was going to be a TV show is like, really? Who would watch it?
My parents still say the same thing about everything I do. That never ends.
Yeah, so but I think she has come around to, I think there was a nervousness with especially some of the more violent aspects of Axe Cop that makes parents nervous. And I think I've just always had a bit more, I guess I am a bit more lax on that. I think that I just think kids know the difference, One of the most fascinating moments with Axe Cop was when some film students from Australia made a live action version of Axe Cop Episode 1, shot for shot, Sin City style, but they used full-on blood and makeup and stuff. And so the scene where Axe Cop is holding the severed dinosaur head and it's dripping blood, and then Dinosaur Soldier in the back is transformed and he's all slimy and looks like a real dinosaur. Malachi was terrified of the screen.
Oh.
He couldn't look at it. He was scared. He didn't like it. He's like, turn it off. So even though it was an idea that he made up, and it was really just a visual representation, he's not thinking in the same terms when he says stuff like, I'm going to chop your head off, or whatever. He's not thinking about severing an actual head or neck.
Right.
So I think that I think she's kind of come around, his mom has come around to realizing that there's a big divide there, and that we're not warping his mind. He's not a little serial killer. The funny thing is, for everybody, a lot of people online think that, this kid must just they assume that he has these young hip parents that let him watch zombie movies and stuff. No, everything he gets is from his dad. Our dad is 73. So he's very old fashioned. He only gets to watch, he doesn't get to watch a bunch of stuff that his parents or grandparents age. So he's very it's filtered, or censored. A lot of the ideas come from like Looney Tunes and Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario. He has Batman do what Mario would do. Like, he doesn't see that Batman is a different genre than Mario.
Yeah.
In his mind, Batman can stomp a turtle out of its shell. He would do that to the Joker. He'd stomp on the Joker's body would pop out of its skin or something.
Right. The Roger Rabbit world.
He'd just turn a lot more violent.
Any other questions? We're in the last few minutes here, if you want. Get them in now.
The amount of questions.
Yes, sir. Ma'am. Can't see.
That's
there you are. That's a definite sir. I just saw a hand. I'm sorry.
How much of the time does your brother know how funny he's being, and can you tell when he's trying to be funny as opposed to when he just thinks he's got a great adventure idea?
He is trying to be funny quite a bit. He loves. So I think that's one thing that people might think we're laughing at him. Sometimes I don't think he loves it. He loves even when he's accidentally funny. So I think that. But yeah, he's always trying to be wacky. So I think that's one part that makes it funny. It is like, Malachi doesn't take himself as seriously as Axe Cop takes himself, and that's probably what makes Axe Cop so funny because he's taking himself dead serious.
I have to say, it really, your iconic Axe Cop really helps with the shades and the sort of 70s California Highway Patrol look. A little bit Beastie Boys and Sabotage going with the stash. Such a great iconic design. Any other questions before we go? Yes?
Does he use any of this stuff in school? Like if he's in English class and trying to, pass off his, well, not English, but like when he's writing stories at school and stuff, does he incorporate any of this into it? And
I know his teacher and his principal are very aware of it and proud of him for it. I have seen, the only thing I've seen is he has a big poster in his room that has that he made. It's like a collage, and it has my family, and it's a picture of the family, and it says my favorite food, and it shows some pizza, and it says some of my toys, and it shows a picture of those toys, and then it says my comic, and there's a full-on picture of his published Dark Horse comic, right there. So it's just funny that he adds that in, just with my favorite animal's a pony. It's my comic.
Iconic pop culture thing I created. My baseball card.
Exactly.
Any last questions? Yeah.
Related to that, around school, do the other kids know he's got a comic? Is he kind of a local celebrity?
I think probably more among adults because they have a better idea that it's a bigger deal. He lives in a small town. Comics are not very well known in small towns. I don't even know. I think there is a Hastings or something. You can buy that. I don't even know if they have that on the East Coast. It's kind of like a Barnes and Noble. I think they might sell the comics there, but just comics in general, especially in kids his age group, Dark Horse comics are not big in that age group, so they don't know anything about it. And the show's on so late and it's so new, I think it's still not really registering too much. From what I've heard, he lives a pretty normal life out there, and he steps into a world where he's famous when he comes to comic conventions. And then he leaves and he goes back to normal life. So.
He rules over them briefly and then goes back to real life. Well, let's have a big round of applause for Ethan Nicolle.